Hey there. 7th week now into my Star Wars reviews. Yes, this one is a bit late, but here we go with my review of Star Wars The Force Awakens. Now, this film is pretty good. It's pretty damn good. Now, I used to say that Episode 3 was my favourite. Granted, it's not favoured by many people. Many people still consider it a very bad film. However, this film for me is now my favourite. Now, there is a reason I've kind of waited a bit later than usual. It's because I wanted to see what audience reactions were, and the general consensus is that it's been taken in well. It's been seen as a very good film. There is very obvious though that the main plot, is pretty much that of A New Hope. Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers or anything in this review. But the plot itself, if you were wanting to see a film for an original plot, it's not there with its creative plot. There's some different elements, different characters, and so on. But plot-wise, it's pretty similar. In fact, even some plot devices, pretty much the same as A New Hope. What I like about this film is the characters. The characters are one of the best parts about this film. I mean, there's some of the interactions between them. I mean, we've got the return of Han Solo as one of the main characters. We see Leia. We've got a bit of Luke. I mean, the characters are pretty much written how we'd expect them for coming back. It was good to see that they've been continued, and Han's still sort of the scoundrel that made him popular originally, and then we've got the new characters. Now, the one that seems to be favoured by most audiences from this film is Rey. Now, Rey, I'm not going to go too much into her, but she's pretty much a lone scavenger on the planet Jakku, having to fend for herself and so on. Her development in the film is pretty good, especially when it comes to interactions with Han and Rey. It's and with BB-8. In fact, BB-8 himself was actually a really good droid. It was one of those at first that I was unsure about, but there's some good comic relief that comes from him. I was worried that when I first saw some of the comic relief in the film that it was going to go overboard, but whilst there is a fair bit of comedy in the film, especially with BB-8, there's a good bit of the film that's not. That's back to how it normally is, and it doesn't go overboard. The comedy doesn't go overboard, which is great. It's great. There's a good balance between what's being taken seriously and the humor in it as well. Then we've got Finn, the stormtrooper that turns against the First Order, and defects essentially. He's good. You see his development as well, how he fears what the First Order is capable of, but he knows them inside and out. So he's sort of key in that sense. And again, his interactions are pretty good. You can see some of the fun coming. There's a lot of fun around him as well. He's a really fun character. There's some of the interactions though. I mean, well, you can tell though because they were taken from birth. The stormtroopers taken from birth now, from families almost. Well, not necessarily straight from birth, but I guess it's somewhat comparable to what the Jedi used to do. Really, was sort of take them from their families, but this time we've got the stormtroopers, which was interesting. Then we've got Kylo Ren. Now, Kylo Ren is obviously, as is pretty obvious, is the main villain in this film. Kylo Ren, for me, is my personal favourite character in the film. A lot of people say he's far too whiny. Now, I didn't find him too whiny. In fact, I thought that was actually really good development for him, saying that it is showing that he's got a lot of internal conflict. I mean, there are some scenes where maybe it went on a little bit longer than ideal, but if you're saying a character's too whiny, just look at Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones, because, well, if you've seen that film, I'm pretty sure you have. If you're watching this, well, yeah. But yeah, I find Kylo Ren to be good at demonstrating the internal conflict, and but still showing that he's somewhat wanting to be true to the dark side. I'm going to say wanting to be true to the dark side because I'm not going to spoil anything actually. But yeah, he has a lot of respect for Darth Vader and almost wants to be Darth Vader. I mean, originally when I heard this, I was worried they were gonna just like rehash Darth Vader, like well they have done the plot of A New Hope. But no, they haven't essentially rehashed Darth Vader's character. Darth Vader himself he's not nothing like Kylo Ren. The two are very very different. I mean, Kylo Ren's still developing as a character, which is good. I mean, originally when we saw Darth Vader was more confident in himself. We're talking to all the other generals, whereas with Kylo Ren, we've got a lot of internal conflict, and somewhat more questions raised about him as well. That's really good to see, and his interactions with characters is good because he does generate the presence that he should be feared. Well, not necessarily because he's a calculated villain, but because he's sort of reckless enough to go for his own means over something that would be more a calculated objective. He'll go for something more personal, which is personally something I thought was really refreshing to see in a Star Wars villain, because we haven't really had sort of an off the hook villain like this. I mean, it's arguable that maybe Anakin Skywalker a bit in Revenge of the Sith, but nothing quite like Kylo Ren, where he's a bit of a loose cannon from what we've seen. Then we've got General Hux. He's a First Order general. He's a good commander. He's a commander on there. He appears to be sort of the rival to Kylo Ren in the First Order. It appears that he's sort of jealous that Snoke has some sort of favoritism to Kylo Ren, as it would appear. I'm not gonna like spoil it, but obviously Supreme Leader Snoke that was in pretty much in command of the First Order. Now it could be that the fact that Kylo Ren's a dark side user, is part of the dark side in his force capabilities, that's obviously creating the rivalry between him and Hux. I mean, Hux has to remind him to sort of keep the First Order's objectives in mind rather than his own personal interests. And we get sort of Kylo Ren's backlash threatening General Hux, which is really interesting to see that we've got that sort of rivalry going on within the Empire, but not everyone being working for Kylo Ren, but rather they're on like the same level as each other, which is really interesting. It was really interesting news. I mean, when we saw Darth Vader, and everyone was sort of subordinate to him, which Kylo Ren sort of within the infrastructure of the First Order, on the same level that General Hux is. And here's another downside to the movie is Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma. She was the stormtrooper in the silver chrome armor, that was used a fair bit in a lot of the promotional materials for this film. Now, the scenes we do see her in, we see her as being somewhat of a stern leader, someone that's not forgiving, but we don't actually see her do anything than give orders or talk, really. She's very, very underused. I mean, it would have been a lot more interesting to see what could have been done with her, but she's very, very underused, which is disappointing, really disappointing. But the film, it continued without her. I mean, it got to the point where I myself forgot that she was in the film. I forgot she was in the film, um, until we see her later, because it's, I think, about an hour she's not in the film floor, and then she comes back in like, oh yeah, uh, we've got her in this film. It's good to see her again. Um, but yeah, I mean, it depends whether or not she'll be used again. I mean, hopefully they'll further her story. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, obviously we don't want them to do too much. In it. I mean, there was there was a lot of nostalgia drive in this film. There was some really good nostalgia drive, and there's a good balance as well, because another worry about this film is that it would have had too much nostalgia drive and would have relied completely on nostalgia, in somewhat, I guess, to make up for what most considered the failure of the prequels. Whereas this, it does have the nostalgia drive, but I find there's a lot more content, specifically with the new characters, and I guess the plot itself, because the plot of A New Hope, it set up a lot. The plot of this film sets up a lot for future films, as well, because it pretty much has the plot of A New Hope. But yeah, there's a lot set up here that we can see maybe be going somewhere, which would be good. It'd be good to see some more of these threads, a bit more into Kylo Ren, Supreme Leader Snoke, more into Rey, more into Finn, and more into Poe Dameron. Poe Dameron's one of the characters that is advertised in the film a lot. He's a resistance captain, no, pilot even, a resistance pilot. But he's not in the film very much. Well, not enough to really say much about his character. I mean, from what we do see, some of the lines spoken, he's sort of got the cool aspect, sort of cool, self-confident aspect about himself. But other than that, we don't really have much. We don't have much at all, really. The action in this film, it feels very Star Warsy. It's like the original trilogy did. I mean, some bits could have been, I guess, a bit better. Some of the dogfights, maybe. I mean, one of the first dogfight in the film is really, really good, really well done. I think, in my opinion, that is. But there are the second dogfight could have been done better, I think. And I mean, it's no secret. So I'm not going to say it's a spoiler, but the climax lightsaber fight, it happens in every Star Wars film. This film pretty much wouldn't be Star Wars if there wasn't a climax lightsaber fight, which there is. Which it's just I guess it's more to do with the characters than the fight itself. I mean, none of the characters really have lightsaber training. The only one that would really have had any training was Kylo Ren with lightsaber combat. So the lightsaber fight itself is, I guess, very basic, but to some extent a lot more aggressive than we normally see. I mean, in the prequels, for me, the prequels have set the standard for the lightsaber fights. The lightsaber fights in the prequels, Episode 1 being the best in my opinion for it, because the lightsaber fight between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan against Darth Maul is, for me, the best lightsaber fight choreography we've had so far. I mean, even to the point where the technique used was somewhat like a dance, which I guess is still very impressive. Whereas this one, it seemed a lot more raw, which works for these characters. It's just not as impressive as we've seen that they're capable of doing. But other than that, it was a pretty good lightsaber fight. But there's, I guess, more emotional intensity in it because of the characters. But like I said, there was. I've seen reading online at reviews, and even comments on social media. A lot of people are saying that some of their issues are also with the fact that there's a lot of questions left to it. Now, if this was a film on its own that pretty much wasn't Star Wars, then that's, I guess, a big complaint. But because this film is setting up for what's going to be a trilogy, and well, even maybe the anthology films could spring off some of the elements in it. Some of the questions brought up, but we've got a lot of setup from the questions. I mean, in A New Hope, I mean, I'm sorry for referring to A New Hope a lot, but this film's pretty much the new version of A New Hope. In A New Hope, we get a lot of some questions raised, and maybe not as much as in this film. But what the questions that are raised are usually, mostly were addressed in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and then those questions were resolved there. This film it brings them up. There's some questions that were answered. I mean, there was a reveal that happened, in my opinion, way too early on. There was a big reveal that should have been, I guess, more near the climax, because I didn't feel it had such a big impact. Because they revealed it so early on. But we can see we can see there's a lot that's being set up. I mean, J.J. Abrams, credit to him, he's created a good film. He's created a brilliant film, even. So far, my favorite Star Wars film, even. But yeah, the plot itself is not so original. It's pretty much a rehashing of A New Hope. What does sell the film, though, is the characters, the settings, even the emotions that it draws out, and I guess for me as well, the nostalgia drive. But yes, this has been my review for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Um, Sorry, it's been a few days later than usual, but I did want to see audience reactions, so I could include that in this review. Sorry if this has gone on for a bit long. This is my first audio review. It'd be nice to get some feedback for that as well. So whether you'd like me to just do a written review or continue with audio reviews. But yeah, be sure to leave a like, comment, and make sure to check out the Facebook page. Right, thank you very much.